Welcome everyone to IMCC. Can everyone hear me okay? Thumbs up, we got thumbs up. Okay, very good. So my name is Denise Owens. I'm one of the 6 Dharma leaders here at IMCC, and welcome to IMCC. Tonight's meditation was a variation from Thea's day-long retreat in January that was so terrific. And I asked her if I could use this for a practical experience for this talk tonight, and she gave me a hearty thumbs up, so thank you, Thea. The talk tonight is on the 5 aggregates of clinging. For some reason, I've always struggled with the teaching on the 5 aggregates of clinging. It just isn't one that I gravitated towards. So I thought, what better way to get cozy with the 5 aggregates of clinging than try to come up with a talk about it. So here we are. The truth is, these aggregates, or what are called groups of experience, which include form, material form, feelings, perceptions, mental fabrications, and consciousness, and I'll go through each later in more detail. They're happening all the time, whether we're aware of them or not. And I find that this is a great way to look at our reality. I suspect reality can be very interesting if we actually take the time and make the effort to look at it. What is actually happening versus what we think is happening. I tend to be about 20 years behind the times, in the relationship to being hip, not hip, okay? So recently when Matrix was out over on Amazon for free, I caught up, okay? Yeah, what, 20 years, right? Exactly. And I found what an interesting concept, this idea that you can choose between the red pill to face reality or choose the blue pill to keep living in an illusion. Morpheus said, you wake up in your bed and you believe whatever you want to believe. Wikipedia states it's implied that the blue pill is a sedative. So to start on trying to understand the 5 aggregates of clinging, I would like to kind of get to baseline. For me, I find to digest concepts, I need a foundational logical approach, sometimes some definitions. So the Buddha is said to have taught one thing, suffering and the end of suffering. There are thousands of pages in the Pali Canon, and it all comes down to suffering and the end of suffering. That's the Cliff Notes, okay? And one of the core teachings of the Buddha in regards to suffering is the 4 Noble Truths. And I'm sure many of you are quite familiar with this, but just to review, the first noble truth is suffering is inherent in the human condition. The second noble truth is the cause of that suffering, and that would be our craving, our grasping, or clinging to wanting things to be a certain way. The third noble truth is how to end that suffering, and that would be to get rid of number 2, to get rid of the craving, the grasping, and the clinging. And the fourth noble truth is the Eightfold Path. It's how to do that. You're going to have to hang on for some more Dharma talks to find out all the Eightfold Path, because we won't have the time tonight. But that'll be the foundation that we'll be working from tonight. Is with the 5 aggregates of clinging, we're going to try to toss off the clinging. That's the long short of it. So the Khandha Sutta is the teaching of the 5 aggregates of the clinging. A sutta is a discourse or a writing of a teaching of the Buddha. Khandha is translated from the Pali language to English as aggregate, group, collection of things, or heap. I don't know, I think heap is a funny word, that all of our life is just a bunch of heaps. These 5 groups of clinging would be the physical and mental components of personality and of sensory experience. And that's what we were working with there, is our sensory experience. The Dharma teacher, Joseph Goldstein, in his book, Mindfulness, wrote, the Buddha used these 5 aggregates of clinging as a contemplation to analyze the subjective experience and through this experiential analysis to deconstruct the deeply held concept of self. That's a lot of big fancy words for what you were just doing. Okay. Goldstein states, the aggregates are direct experience of material elements, or what we might call form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness that lead us into the profound investigation of what we call life. Each of these 5 elements is present in every one of our experiences. The first, mental material elements or forms on the material matter of our environment. The chairs we're sitting on, the zafus and zapatons we're sitting on, okay? The floor that our feet might be touching, our clothing, the heat, etc., detected by our sense organs, such as the eyes, ears, skin, nose, tongue, and mind for thought. It is through these senses that we experience this material world. So you're starting to see why it was connected to the meditation today, right? The second aggregate is feelings, not the emotional feelings that we often think about, but the involuntary internal experience of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. The third aggregate is perceptions, or what is known, a recognition in the brain or the nervous system of the form that we are experiencing. It's an awareness before any judgment. It's an immediate recognition that can be followed by mental labeling, heat, clothing, chairs, and so on. The fourth aggregate is mental formations or fabrications. These are our mental reactions towards the pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral experiences. As no surprise, most of us crave or want more of the pleasant, not so much for the unpleasant. And what we find here is that we develop greed for the pleasant, hatred for the unpleasant experiences. And that can lead us to clinging, to wanting things to be either the way they are and to stay that way, or to not be like that at all. Or we may just have delusion in regards to a seemingly neutral experience, as if that neutral experience is unimportant. But the good news here is mindfulness can also result in mental formations of non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion, also known as generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. Desire to not let go of your coat or sweater or blanket tonight is the pleasantness of the felt warmth. And in this particular case, you might be clinging to that form due to the pleasant feeling, the perception of warmth, and the mental formation that, ooh, I think I'd be unhappy without this coat, blanket, or whatever the other thing I was. So what is the other one I said? Sweater. Anybody still wearing a sweater? There we go. And not wanting to let go of this material form is the clinging. And the thought of even letting go of it is the suffering. Sean Murphy, in his article on the 5 aggregates of clinging in the Tricycle magazine, said, mental formation is where we have volitional control of our mental actions triggered by some object, and it produces karma. The first 3 aggregates of material form, feelings, and perception are involuntary and automatic without our intentional action. It is when we come down to the mental formations and fabrications, our reactions and what we do with them. Action is the word for karma, it's the translation. It's there that we get the karma and the law of cause and effect comes into play. This is where we can intervene with hopefully our Dharma practice to help us to choose better ways to react and to comport ourselves. The 5th aggregate is consciousness, also known as knowing, or an awareness of objects through our sense faculties. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, I recently started listening to podcasts by neuroscientist, philosopher Sam Harris. I think many of you here listen to him or have listened to him at some point. This guy's brilliant. He has brilliant guests, and they seemingly contemplate everything down to the electron. I'm fascinated by what he has to say, but now I have even more questions about life than I ever have had before. In particular, one day I was listening to a podcast on consciousness. I don't know if that makes me a curious nerd or a confused soul. And Sam Harris has podcasts on confused souls also. Either way, the 5 aggregates of clinging came to mind, because I've always thought that the 5th aggregate of consciousness got shortchanged. It seems to be left out. It's knowing. Okay, well, what does that mean? Okay. So Sam Harris describes consciousness as the subjective, qualitative experience in the world. The lights go on. He says the experiential component of what it's like to be me is simply a subjective side of a certain class of physical events. Those are our forms. Something the brain is doing, our perceptions. And then I did a Siri search. The state of being awake and aware of one's surroundings. The fact of awareness by the mind of itself in the world. For those who are well steeped in the Dharma and an understanding of selfing and non-selfing, this is kind of more of a brain action of that we have some awareness that we're being of some sort. It's not necessarily selfing in this. And that's, again, another talk on selfing. That's harder than the aggregates of clinging. So I'm not doing that one anytime soon. The Cambridge Dictionary states that consciousness is the state of understanding and realizing something. Back to Joseph Goldstein. The teachings of the aggregates directly point to those realities underneath the surface appearance of self, I, and being. Through this investigation, we begin to discover what we really are. That is impermanent and ever-changing. Each of these 5 aggregates is impermanent. Material form is impermanent. The chair, the heat, the clothing will not last forever. And it is the same for the sense organs that we experience them with. Getting old, if anyone's doing that, requires ever more effort to try to get these organs to function like they used to. Do you see the clinging? I know every morning I feel like I do the hokey pokey. I put the eye drops in, I take the mouth guard out, I put my nose spray in, and I swish the Listerine about. And I could go on. And I don't know, does anyone feel like they have to spend more time in the morning just to do the basics? There I am clinging to my other stuff again. Okay, and just as material form and our sense organs are changing, so are the feelings. They are impermanent and often seem fleeting, at least the pleasant ones. The unpleasant ones also pass, just doesn't seem as quick as the pleasant ones. Perceptions are impermanent. How we process information is always changing as our brains change, neuroplasticity. Our mental formations are impermanent. Do you think the same way about Russia attacking Ukraine now as you did 10 years ago when they attacked Ukraine? Our consciousness is impermanent. At one point in learning to drive, did not noting the street signals happen? Then when did they become subconscious? We can have subconscious seeing. You get home and you think to yourself, did I go through a red light on the way home? Truth is, if you saw a red light, you would have stopped. You saw greens, so you didn't stop, hopefully. I mean, there's probably a point where that doesn't happen, but hopefully not. And if anyone right now is falling asleep during this talk, your consciousness is changing. The aggregates are inherently unstable and leave us with uncertainty. Trying to cling to these 5 which by their nature will change, is like trying to nail jello to a tree. It is burdensome, it is suffering, it is energy lost, and it is futile. And in none of these five can we truly find a self. I want to read to you part of the Kanda Sutta. Keep in mind these teachings in the Buddha's time were oral, okay? So these suttas often have repetitive phrases that seem to say the same thing over and over again. But there are usually subtle differences per phrasing. So you can almost make it a game right now to see if you can figure out which of these phrases is slightly different. But you can see how the repetitive nature would have been very helpful if you had to learn something orally and you didn't have a smartphone to just look up life's answers. This is translated by Tenisaru Bhikkhu. At Savatthi, there the Blessed One said, monks, I will teach you the five aggregates, the five clinging aggregates. Listen and pay close attention. I will speak. As you say, Lord, the monks responded. And what are these five clinging aggregates? Whatever form, past, future, or present, internal or external, blatant or subtle, common or sublime, far or near, is clingable, offers sustenance, is accompanied by mental fermentation. This is called the form clinging aggregate. Whatever feeling, past, future, or present, internal or external, blatant or subtle, common or sublime, far or near, is clingable, offers sustenance, and is accompanied with mental fermentation. This is called the feeling clinging aggregate. Whatever perception, past, future, or present, internal or external, blatant or subtle, common or sublime, far or near, is clingable, offers sustenance, is accompanied with mental fermentation. That is called perception clinging aggregate. How many more times do you have to go through this? 2 more times. Whatever mental formation or fabrication, past, future, or present, internal or external, blatant or subtle, common or sublime, far or near, are clingable, offer sustenance, and are accompanied with mental fermentation. Those are called the mental fabrications clinging aggregate. Whatever consciousness, past, future, or present, internal or external, blatant or subtle, common or sublime, far or near, is clingable, offers sustenance, and is accompanied with mental fermentation. That is called the consciousness clinging aggregate. These are called the five clinging aggregates. Now, it's really hard when it is repeated like that. I want to breeze past, and I almost feel like I'm creating suffering for everybody by doing that. But the truth is, if you look into each one of these words, it's a real challenge to us. Can we look at these things, past and future and present, inside and out? It's kind of hard to do that. It'd take a lot of work to do that. So this is a bit of a challenge. So how can this be used practically? Well, several years ago, our wonderful Dharma leader, Ward, did a terrific talk on the five aggregates of clinging as a meditation awareness tool to help us better understand our mind. I, being the occasional wise ass that I can be, said, Ward, I'm already busy in my meditation observing my ruminations and the five hindrances of desire, aversion, sloth, restlessness, and doubt. I don't think I have much time left to look at what else is going on under this lid. And then Thea introduced the sense gate meditation at the day long. And I thought it was just an incredible tool. I could actually feel it. I could sense it. I could see what was happening. I was surprised about how well I was able to focus. I was fascinated to see the difference in my intention and the number of thoughts creeping in as the meditation went on. They just diminished. As I continued to practice with the senses, I was able to hear, feel, and even smell things that I wouldn't have thought I would have noticed before if I was not in tuned and attuned and with intention. Very interesting tonight. Did anyone smell a little sense of toast? Did anyone else smell that? When I first did this, I was in the back corner and I saw the mustiness. I don't know if the folks in the back corner smell the mustiness. Okay, yeah, we got a positive, got an affirmative on that back there. But who would have thought about smelling new things in here before? Maybe you have and I missed it, sorry. I felt more clear and I was able to slow down my thoughts. Also clear on how my experience seemed to be just one fleeting moment strung with another to make up what I call life. Kind of reminded me of the Winston Churchill quote, history is just one damn thing after another. And I didn't make any of these moments occur or happen. My sole action in meditation was the experiencer. I was not and am not the director. Most times I'm a pretty unaware being, thinking and acting with a fraction of an understanding of what is actually going on. This tool helped me to see more clearly, and I might even confess that it made my experience of life feel richer, and a gratitude for the simple was present. Perhaps you might choose an activity this week that you might even spend 5 minutes on to try to apply this little meditation. You might, now I would never recommend meditating while driving. That would not be wise, okay? But you could use this with driving, right? Going home. It might be advantageous. You can be totally present with what you see, hear, smell, and think. Are you with each experience in the action of driving to maximize your successful arrival to your desired destination? Has every experience along the way been the same? Probably highly unlikely because the scene is constantly changing as you're going along. I purposely left out taste because I hope you have already eaten tonight and I didn't want to encourage anyone to make a Jenny's ice cream run on the way home in order to have taste. You can actually include taste and just do it as the absence of taste. In summary, material objects become known through the sense organs, yielding an involuntary sensation of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feeling. The brain perceives the experience. Our reaction to the experience is called a mental formation, which is where we can intervene to choose a beneficial response. And the awareness of this experience is called consciousness. Let's turn the lights on.